Carolyn Doobie here. What's the play for today? Today I'm playing around on my gel press plate with a very fancy pattern making tool to create some fun prints. Now, when I'm doing this, when I'm creating the layers, I like only the most proper and finest of tools. Say things like packing materials. This is what came in something. I can't even remember what it was. I was just more excited about the package than whatever was in it. So I've hung onto these until I had a day to play, and you're gonna get to see my very first time getting some color on these things here in today's video. This packaging is a really sturdy, molded kind of cardboard paper, whatever this stuff's made out of. But just know that whatever kind of packing material that you've got access to, whatever's come in the mail and something you've bought, you can use these techniques for that too. I'm working here on the 12 by 12 gel press plate, and I'm going to start by putting a layer of color on there. And I'm not going to cover the whole plate, just part of it. To clean the paint off of my brayer, I'm just going to use a piece of book text here and just clean it off a little bit. Clearly, I'm not that careful about cleaning off the brayer. This big piece of packing material has now become like a big, giant stamp. Now that I've got one color on here, I'm going to bring in a second color. So on part of the plate that doesn't have any paint on it yet, I'm going to put another color on here. Now, if you've been watching me like a hawk as I'm doing this, you might have noticed that it was a different brand or type of paint that I used from the first one. The first paint was an Amsterdam standard paint, and the second one was a Liquitex heavy body paint. Why did I make that change? What was the big reason for it? I simply wanted to use that color. When I'm playing around with acrylic paints that I like, what matters to me most is it's a color that I like. And I love bright, vibrant colors, so that's why I'm grabbing the ones that I'm using. I'll use a variety of brands. It doesn't bother me one bit. What matters most to me is the color. Did you notice that little shake that I was doing as I pushed my pattern making tool in here? Well, I do that on purpose. When you push it down, if you give it that little bit of wiggle, it grabs more of the paint. So I will give it sometimes a pretty firm wiggle. I am not a delicate little flower in my life, nor am I when I'm playing around with art supplies. So I like using ones that can handle being used, and gel press plates are definitely that. I chose this pink so it'll really stand out to you how the color moves around when you're pressing your pattern tool into the paint. So there I'm picking up some of the pink, and now as I kind of put it down a little bit here and there, little bits of that paint is going to transfer around. Now I'm going to drop a truth bomb on you that's going to blow your mind that you probably had no idea about. And that is, if you have more paint on that plate, then more paint transfers when you put your pattern tool into it. And if you have less paint on that plate, there's less paint that's going to transfer around. And okay, yeah, maybe not really a truth bomb. Maybe that was something that you already knew. But just know, when you're playing around with pattern making tools on your plate, that if you want to have more of it transfer, if you want more of that paint to move around, then make sure you have a little bit more on your plate. If you don't want a lot to transfer, then use a smaller amount of paint. Some of the paint that I put on here is going to blend and move around. As I put the yellow on top here, you'll see how that pink kind of mixes around a little bit with it. You can see little streaks of it there in the yellow. It's not completely mixed in, but you definitely get those flavors of it. I'm going to add just a little more color on here. And once I get that teal on there, then I'm going to take the print. What paper am I going to use? Well, I like using a 90-pound cardstock, and it is completely personal preference. I just like the feel of it, the weight of it. If you like a heavier cardstock, if you like copy paper, if you like book text, scrapbook paper, whatever paper that you like, you can absolutely put on top of that. The only kind of paper that I stay away from is vintage and very delicate and fragile because it'll break and tear and that kind of thing. Or also a glossy coated paper like inkjet photo paper. Oh, I like how all that grunge is playing together on this print. Now, as much as I've got on this paper, there's still paint on that plate, and I'm going to take another print. But before I take the print, I'm actually going to add more paint to it. I'm going to bring in some more colors to play around there. Now, since there's a bunch of paint already on that plate, I am not going to have to do nearly the number of layers for this print. It's really just about getting more color and paint covering the plate. The pattern is already baked in there. Well, I mean, not literally baked, because this hasn't gone in an oven and this isn't for food, but you know what I mean. Once I get all of the paint on here, there is something different that I'm going to do about taking this pull than I did the first one. And that is, I'm going to give it a little bit of time. So I'm going to put the paper on, same exact way I did with the last one. Make sure I've got great contact pushing it down with my hand. You can also run your brayer over it, that kind of thing. Just need to make sure that paper is touching the paint. And then I'm going to let it sit for about a minute, minute and a half. That way it can grab that paint so that when I come back, this is the print that I get. I just love all the little bits of grunge within these prints. Well, thanks so much for joining me for today's play. If you'd like more ideas and ways to use your gel press plate, hit that subscribe button. That way you'll know as soon as there's a new video out. And thanks so much for letting me be a part of your colorful journey.